Hello and welcome to Bricks and Banter, the show with real talk from the custom LEGO community. I'm your host as always, Billy, and today we're jumping straight into it. This intro is going to be short and sweet because I'm just too excited for y'all to listen. This has been a long time coming, and I cannot believe I'm finally joined by the man who, for all intents and purposes, started it all. His company is the rock in which the custom LEGO community was built on. That's right, I'm talking about none other than Will Chapman, the creator of BrickArms. So with no further ado, let's just get right into the episode, and I hope you enjoy our conversation.
Brick by brick, piece by piece, real talk coming live from the streets. Brick by brick, piece by piece, real talk coming live from the streets. Brick by brick, piece by piece, real talk coming live from the streets. Brick by brick, by piece, by piece,
And then we'll get going.
Yeah, I love that starting music. That's pretty cool stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my good buddy got into producing his own music about 3 or so years ago, and it finally came around. I was like, hey, why don't you just make me a intro music? So
It's
I paid
so
him for
good.
that. It really works
Yeah,
perfectly
you
for
can
him.
kind of sing along to it almost. You know, it's like I know as the pitches go up and down, and I memorize. You know, when the gal sings up and down, it's pretty cool.
That's his sister, another great friend. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
she harmonizes with herself. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right, and we're here with Will Chapman, the founder and CEO of BrickArms. How are you doing, Will?
Doing good, man.
This is it's beyond a pleasure, really. It's almost surreal. Uh, this podcast started a bit as a joke between friends, and as things progressed, I've regarded you as the dream guest, quite honestly. So I'm very grateful that not only are you enjoying the podcast yourself, but would take the time to do an episode with me. It means a lot.
I've heard them all. I've listened to every one of them. I listen to them while I work out, actually. It's like I look forward to seeing when they're going to come out. I think you used to do them like twice a week, and then it got down to like once a week. And
yeah, it was. It started with once a week because between quarantine and being excited to get it started, and everyone was like, "Oh, I want to get on this and that." Like there was a lot of excitement to start. So I liked building up a deep catalog to begin with, and then it got a little bit too unmanageable, and I would burn myself out. So I realized doing bi-weekly would be best, and that's keeping it steady now.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've hit, and there's so many guys I know or I've interacted with, like every single one of the people, and it's nice bringing back memories of, oh, I remember that from Brick Fair, or I remember that from him from Brick World, or I remember when he was 12, or I remember he was 13 coming up and talking to me at the tables, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's something I've really been feeling a lot lately too. I just went to Brick Fair, New Jersey this past weekend.
Okay.
And just kind of going, I started off obviously as a kid 10 years ago going myself, and now I drive myself to the cons and everything like that, and just seeing people on my own terms and all that. It's a weird, surreal experience just being in this so long.
Being an adult where you get to come in without having to be chaperoned and be able to do your own thing. I mean, the cons have changed a little bit from when I first started with them. They tended to be, everybody was included, and then it was teens of a certain age, and then it was accompanied teens, and it got to this whole phase of being mostly adults. And I missed that I want to say preteen. It's not the right way to say it, but I miss the kids that have gotten really excited about the modding and the modern Lego stuff. And it's really tough to have them kind of get involved as much, because they have to drag their parents with them to every day of the convention.
Right. Yeah, no, I was blessed to have great parents who would support me bringing me out to the cons, and you see it sometimes. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Xbox Live.
Yeah, oh yeah,
on Instagram.
He's a big guy.
One of the most beautiful memories this past Brick Fair was we were all at a couple of us just used Victor's tables because he wasn't showing up early, so he gave us clearance to use it to just set up all our cases and mod and have a good time on one of the pre nights. And we saw this kid walk up with his parents in tow and just like shyly like tries to introduce himself, and we're like, oh, what's your like handle? And it was like, oh, I'm Dr. Xbox Live, and all of us just erupted, like we were so excited to see him.
Oh yeah.
And his mother's face just like lit up, like, oh wow, like they're not these brooding teens at the
Oh,
table.
no.
Like, it's good company.
No, and that's the hardest thing is matching up the names to their user IDs
Mm,
and having people realize that holy crap, whatever user ID you pick is what you have for the rest of your life.
you
It
live with
seems.
it.
That's it. That's it. It's like Alex's. Like I could have sworn I would look at his as CA compliment, and I
That's what
didn't
I.
realize this.
Yes.
CA compliant? It's
Yes.
like, is it California compliant? Is it a not? Is it a joke? Is it a tongue-in-cheek joke? Like, is California compliant? But then it's spelled wrong, And I'm looking
Yeah.
at that going, it's compliment. It's got to be compliment. And then I heard your podcast and I go, oh man, I've been thinking it wrong in my head this whole time.
Dude, he's one of my best friends, and for so long I thought it was like cacompliant or something, and it was just some reference that I didn't understand.
That's a
Like,
good one. Oh yeah, what Collins like TK-77 or 1776. I'm like,
yep.
where did that come from? I never asked him. Like, where did you get that? Is that like a stormtrooper designation? I can't quite figure what that is.
Yeah, no, I think he it's a combination of Declaration of Independence, 1776 sort of deal, and then attaching it to a call sign of a clone trooper.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Oh man, we're already off to the banter. I love it.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, man. But you really hit me with anything about BA. I try to. I mean, it's been 15 years. I've got 450, 500 different designs. So it's going to be hard to try to put a date to anything. But I can.
No, I don't got any questions.
Okay, good.
I made sure to not have any questions that are date specific. You could just give me like the sort of vibe of what was going on.
Oh, good. Here's what I tried to do. Like, I was trying to remember which shows have I been to and how long. It went back. Like, I went to 4 different shows in 2010 and 3 different shows in 2012. If you were going to say, remember when we met in 2013? It's like, no. I don't. In my mind, all the cons just blurred together into one big convention in my head. So yeah, that was going to be tough.
Speaking of the con, I mean, I'm just going to jump all over the place then. Speaking of the cons, do you have a favorite memory that sticks out from your time traveling the circuit?
Yeah, it's not pandering in any way, but I remember Brick Fair and talking to, I think, Tanner. I think that was the first time that I had, because I've been speaking to Detroitica or talking to him online quite a bit, but then meeting him at one of the shows and going, oh, incredible. And we talked for like a half an hour just about modding. And he was like, I'm totally jazzed to meet you. And I was like, I'm totally jazzed to meet you. And then realizing that people really understanding, kids were kind of afraid to come up and talk to me, like they were self-conscious about it. But I remember though that and him taking me over to where the guys, the modern and I guess all the science fiction-y kind of, kids were like, I think they were playing Xbox in the back of the tables or something. And they were just all chatting and just talking and say, hey, what's going on, Will? But those are the memories I mostly connect to, are seeing the guys behind the tables doing the modding or, doing building. I think there was one Brick Fair where Clue and I think Chris Calgill and Jeremy were back, just had all the stanchions built into like a little, like a little tent almost.
Yeah, the red tent. Yeah.
And you didn't know you couldn't even know that they were there. But as soon as you open up the curtain, there's bottles of Mountain Dew everywhere, and they're just piles and piles and piles of BrickArms that they were cutting up. And I think that was the one where I brought like a huge bag of just misprints and odd short shots, and they were just having a blast cutting stuff up. And I remember opening up the curtain and looking in and saying, hey guys. And then I remember Chris Calgill going, Mr. Chapman, come on over here and sit down. I thought, that is so cool. I think that was the first time I'd actually really met Chris. And he's like, come over here and sit down and talk to us. And I was like, this is really cool. So those are good memories.
Those are all the best guys. The red tent really brings back memories.
Yeah, it's like they build their own zone, because there's so many shows where the teens are like pushed to the edges, and modern Brick Fair modern was like way in the back. It started way in the back, and then it just got kind of pushed around to the edges because it was a little too politically charged at times for the Lego shows. And
right.
Then Lego started to become less and less sponsorific, I should say, where there was less and less of a Lego presence. And that started to move a little bit farther forward, and there was more things being able to be shown, because it wasn't necessarily under the
Lego umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got distance.
That was really cool to see kind of that open up a bit over the years. But I felt really bad for those guys sometimes. It's like, you guys shouldn't be stuck on the edges. Some of your stuff is the most creative in this entire room, and it needs to be brought out a little bit farther forward. But I think just because military has grown so much over the years, that there's just more and more people bringing more and more stuff. So it's kind of like, we're here and we're here to stay. And how dare you tell me to sit in the back,
Yeah, no, there's no
so to
question
speak.
anymore that it's not a fad or it's going to go away. I mean,
Yeah.
it's getting more and more accepted every day, so it's a great thing. I think especially the customized elements as well, with having like third party presence at these conventions. I'm sure from your time when you first got into things, it was such a taboo. And
Oh, you don't even know, man. It was so tough. I think I just happened to know some really great guys running shows, and they knew of my stuff, and they were more than happy. Like at BrickCon, Wayne Husey was like, "Yeah, you can have a table here, of course." It was like the first year. This is 2006, way back. This is in the time machine, way back. There's maybe 5 vendors there at the show, and I had one little table with my 6 designs from my very first mold. And he was like, "Yeah, this is totally cool." And no one said a word. No one was like, "Oh my gosh, weaponry at custom weapons at a Lego show." And I thought, this is really cool. However, there was nobody using my stuff in any mocks anywhere. It was still purist. It's still, well, like a lot of part of the shows are. But over the years, it's inescapable. There's custom stuff all over. Now, that doesn't mean there's custom bricks or custom brick elements, and if there are, they're hidden. They're
yeah,
part of the structure of things. But the kind of stuff I produce and some of the other third party folks, it's everywhere. It's unavoidable, and it's just here to stay.
yeah, it's funny with the modified bricks not coming into prominence, which totally makes sense. But I feel like I can't, when I do occasionally build, I can't go without modifying a actual brick that I put on the mock.
I wonder how many bricks are like cut in half, and have that rough edge pushed to the back. Because sometimes you can't get that certain color and that certain amount of studs, and you
Right.
just can't wait 5 days to get it. So you do what it takes. You're gonna make some hack. And I think I've cut quite a few 1x4s or 1x6s down into 1x3s back before they even existed. And yeah, those were good times.
I remember cutting like one of my first pieces I ever made. I cut with scissors a 2x4
Holy
into a
moly!
1x4 because I just couldn't find the piece.
Did you put it in a vise, or how did your scissors even get through that?
Just went through it, went to town.
Oh, but nowadays you'd use a razor saw, right? And then you'd touch up those edges with an X-Acto, right?
Yeah, and then you sand it down, and then and then it's a
2000
polished
grit.
brick.
That's right. Still hidden though. You still push that edge away from the view.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, yeah. I see. I don't see nearly as much of the custom, the need for the custom bricks. I see. I mean, weirdly, I still see some of, like, there's some Mega Bloks, and I'm not saying that I like Mega Bloks content or their style, but I like that their exploration into changing the brick a little bit, adding a couple things to it,
Mm.
trying to make some. I think they have some smooth surface bricks that I've really liked, and I've wished Lego has produced. But the Mega Brick quality was just so poor that it was, you couldn't possibly use them. But you look at it like, what if? And then of course Lego, then every year they get more and more elements produced, more and more catering to the small designs, to more. I think it started with the cheese slope, that little tiny cheese slope, and now
Yeah.
we've got crazy little bitty pieces. I think my favorite's like, it's like a bar sized tube with a hole through it, and then there's a collar. There's like a stud sized collar right in the center, and it's the
Oh, yes, I
perfect.
know what you're talking
It's
about.
just a gorgeous piece, but you get like one in each set.
Hmm.
It's one of those things. But I put it in my calipers, and I was doing all my measurements on it, going, they did some really perfect work with these things. But that I really like to see. I really like seeing really small elements being produced.
Yeah, no, the polish Lego has for those tiny pieces is really cool to see.
And
I
being a
get,
manufacturer, it's kind of like, I know how hard it is to make those things. You have to find a way to inject them, hide the injection mark, and also eject them from the molds. And it takes a lot of room in the mold to have pins coming in from either side, and then you still have to punch the part out. So I look at all of that stuff, looking at how Lego produces things to try to see if I can even approach some of that quality. But it's really, really tough.
that's very interesting you say that. Oh, a parallel I feel of that is I really enjoy music, but I have not like a single talent in my body for music. And some of my friends who do like start discussing things on such a deeper level. I'm like, man, Like, I love to join the conversation, but I'm just like, yeah, like that sound where it went like, like
Right.
that, like was amazing. And they're
Right.
like, well, the vibrato of the, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
Vibrano.
if I love music this much now, I can only imagine when you have the
Oh
backstory.
god. Yeah, having just learning the words, right? All of the words is part of the domain that if you don't know them, you sound really goofy, you know?
Yeah, amateur.
Yeah, like words like vibrano.
I don't even know what that is.
With an N, I don't think it's a word.
Man, I feel like we touch on so many things. I don't know where to go.
Hey, and so everybody knows I have ADD. I'm an adult with ADD. I was a teenager with ADD. This is how I operate. My brain is all over the place. So
No, I'm with it.
that's why someone can say, "Hey, have you thought of doing this?" And I go, "No." And then that day I'll design something, I'll cut the mold, I'll inject it, and I'll show it online. They'll go, "Wait, didn't we just talk about this yesterday?" It's like, yeah, that's kind of how it works. If it takes me longer than a day to do something, I get bored. So, strike while the iron's hot is the kind of phrase you use with guys like us.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of a bit of the designing process and difficulties that go into it, what do you feel like was the hardest overmold for you to produce?
Oh, it's the one I'm remolding now. It's the Wunderwaffe. Holy moly,
Oh,
is the
geez,
thing a
yeah.
pain. It has curved pieces. It's got a brass core, and then it has a transverse spike in the front that has to go in kind of like a cross. And then it has a brown stock, butt stock, and then it has a brown foregrip, and then a gunmetal receiver that goes around the whole thing. And because the same piece has to be moved into multiple molds, each mold has to be designed so that it can accommodate that piece being placed back in the mold. Because kind of what happens is you take and you inject the core, which is, I still don't know how to describe it. I'm like moving my hands around. You can't see me doing that. I'm gesticulating next to the mic. And then you have to pluck it out and put it into another mold and inject plastic around just certain areas of that piece. So
Right.
what happens is you're putting it back into the second mold. As you close the mold, it kind of scrapes along the edges of the part and it will
Mm,
kind of flash a little bit. Then if you have to take that out and putting in another mold, you have to clean it, with an X-Acto before you put it in that other mold, or you'll flash even more. So my first Wunderwaffe mold was just a nightmare. I got maybe one. I think I get one full part in each mold, so they take way too long to produce. So I've learned how to shell the part, which means take and I put a skin around the outside that's like 2/100 of a millimeter thick. So when
mm,
I put the part back in the mold, that cavity that I'm putting it in is slightly larger. That way it doesn't scrape the part. So, but getting into how large to make that and how much of the void to put behind it. So I'm having, I love making mistakes in the sense that I learn from that. I really like being able to just change it in CAD, push a couple buttons, redo it's called the cam, which is the mold file, and then set up some aluminum and cut it the same day. And like in 3 hours later, I've got parts to play with. So that one's been a real pain. None of the others are really as difficult because I'm only putting the core in one time. I inject the core, I put it in, and then I inject like the stock around the part.
right. And it's just two colors.
Yeah, and it's usually only two things in a mold because my molds are only 3 inches by 2.5 inches. They're really small for the overmold stuff. I don't do any production overmolding. My molder doesn't really want to put his hands into molds. These my big molds while they're running. I mean, my little molds weigh
Mm.
like 3 ounces. My big ones are like 150 pounds. So he doesn't want to reach in there. And I mean,
It took me a second to understand what you're saying, but yeah, I don't
sorry,
blame him.
sorry. I'm moving way ahead, but yeah, you'd have to open up the machine opens up. You'd have to put your parts in, and then you have to like and have it slam closed on those. And then if there's any errors, if they drop, because most big molding machines, the mold is vertical. So
Mm.
if there's no place, if the piece you're putting in could fall out, it could fall down and then get smashed when the mold closes. And I've had it so some of my pins have dropped while I've closed the mold. And then you smash this pin, it puts a divot, like a big divot in the edge of the mold, and it'll scrap that entire cavity. It's super frustrating. So, I mean, I tend to like cut as many corners as I can and still produce high quality parts. I don't know if that makes sense. I can't sit and like bolt the mold together and screw it together and then put it in and then unscrew it. I tend to hold it closed, slip it in the machine, and push the buttons and say, "Go, please work, please work." So because of that, sometimes the pins will drop down a little bit, but I also know that I can recut the molds in a few hours, and then hopefully they'll be just as good as the ones I started with.
I didn't realize it. You have a production molder like at your workshop?
No, I have two CNC machines that are almost identical, so I can run two halves of the mold.
Okay,
But
sure.
I also have two injection molders that are pneumatic. They're air powered. One's a high pressure injection molder and one's a low pressure, but they're really small. They're called desktop injection molders. They only sit about 3 feet tall.
Mm,
But the production stuff is in the States. But my guy that does those does not want to.
gotcha.
He'll change colors for me. He'll do all kinds of great stuff. He'll run platable plastic for me. He'll do crazy mixes with oh geez, like a silver concentrate. He'll put sparkles in the plastic.
Mm,
He'll run stuff from, I think he was doing motorcycle handles at one point. He goes, "I got this great rubber. Would you like to try it?" It's like, sure.
awesome. Yeah.
I don't have anything I can do anything with, but he does all the really like production ready type stuff where I'll get, a big box of parts from him. But locally, my stuff is considered benchtop. So I do some what I can consider like small batch production. Like all the overmolds are called a small batch production. I'll maybe sit and do 50 of them in a night, maybe sometimes 20, depending on what plastics I have available and how it's weird. I mean, Washington. I live in Washington, and it's very humid in the sense that it's raining all the time. So I have to dry my plastic constantly because if it gets it's hygroscopic ABSs, so it absorbs water. So if you inject that, it'll create what's called splay. As the water inside turns to steam, it pushes right out of the plastic. So those are little like kind of like white marks on the edges of parts. And some of my stuff gets out a little bit that'll have that. And if someone goes, "Hey, I see this little white streak," it's like, yeah, that's probably because I didn't dry my plastic before I ran it that night.
Hmm.
I try to catch that. It does sometimes. I miss a few.
How do you dry it? Just with a rag before
No,
placing it in?
no. Those are like little pellets, man. They're like it's like rice. The stuff I use.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, I suppose I could dry every one of those, but the cost would go way up. No, I put it in a toaster oven. So I have just like a little toaster oven, and I just do the batch that I need. And it's the smaller the quantities you do, the like with anything, the more turnout flow you can get. So it takes about an hour, half an hour to an hour to dry it out. So I'll usually turn the toaster oven on before I get into the shop that day and dry out whatever I'm going to be working with. But some days the plastic flows smooth, and some days it gets splay no matter what I do, and it's just frustrating as heck. It's just there's a little bit of art to what I do, and there's a little bit of science, and because I'm both right-brained and left-brained, I'm kind of what we call a mid-brain. So I can do the CAD work, but I can also do the artistic side. It makes it so that it's a bit of a challenge sometimes to get things done.
Interesting. Going back a little to the injection molders you use. What's the difference between the high pressure and low pressure one? Are they used for different?
Yeah. So they're different size rams. So one's like a 1/2 inch ram, the other's like smaller. I can't remember exactly. Oh, anyway, it's like I don't know how to describe it. Like one's the size of your thumb, the other's the size of your ring
Pinky?
finger.
Okay, sure.
About your pinky. So, but using the same amount of air and using the same ram and using the same clamp, you can get a lower. The larger ram is a lower pressure, but can do more volume. It can push more plastic. Where the smaller one has a smaller chamber that you put the plastic in, and using the same air, you're getting a higher pressure. So I usually do the brown, like the stocks I use on the high pressure machine, so they don't get any sink because it can hold the pressure really well. Sometimes you might, I don't like to bag on my own stuff, but sometimes you'll see some of my overmolds, there'll be like a little dimple, like in the middle of the stock. Just every once in a while you get that. And those were run before I had the high pressure machine. So it was a real tough when you inject into those molds, as it cools, the plastic wants to come back out of the mold through the gate. So that's what creates the dimple. I mean, Lego has it all over the place. If you look at some of the Tommy guns from old Batman sets,
Mm.
there's sink all over these little rubber. They're kind of like a rubbery machine gun. There's sink everywhere. Even the stocks on the muskets, the old muskets, had sink
Yes, I
until
remember that.
until
I can
until
visualize that. Yeah.
until they fixed it. What they did is they just put a void in their mold, so it has kind of like a hollow area in the stock already because they couldn't get it to fill right. And that's just has to do with the pressure in the mold, where you gate it, how the plastic flows. And because I do my own molds, I'm playing all the time with the gating location. Where do you inject the plastic? Do you move it around? Do you put it at the end? Do you put it in the side? Do you put it in the middle? It's a lot of fun to try to find that exact place. And every mold's different because as soon as you put the core back into an overmolded mold, the plastic flows, it has to flow around that core and lock it in.
Right.
So it has to be sometimes the path of that plastic, because it's like a fluid. It's just like the hot plastic flows just like a fluid. It just happens to inject in the mold like in a tenth of a second or something. It's insanely fast. But you have to think about that. And then the size of your gate, the hole that you inject the plastic into, has to be of the right size so that it'll freeze off as it's done injecting and doesn't let the plastic out. So anyway, the high pressure machine lets you put more plastic in at higher pressure, and it packs that plastic in. So as it starts to come out, it's already overpressured. Anyway, and it makes it so that I can do the brown stocks a whole lot better than I used to be able to. Some things were low availability just because I was not happy with the viability of what I was producing. I know it's a lot of technical stuff. Maybe there's some listeners who are interested in this stuff. I don't know.
We'll appeal to the right and the left brain people in this podcast. We'll go back to more banter now.
That's right. Just cut all that other stuff out. Yeah. Oh man.
All right, jumping into just random more topics.
Okay, sure.
When you're designing, do you ever consider the modding possibilities of an item?
Yes, it's usually forefront. And I know what you're saying. When you say modding possibilities, you're thinking, can I cut off a piece of this without compromising either the original, or can I salvage the piece I'm cutting off? I try to do that as much as possible. I'll try to float the scopes if I can. I'll bring them up a little higher than normal.
Yes.
Or I'll try to sit them on a rail that's clippable so that if you are sacrificing the gun, you're getting a good base on the scope. I try to make sure that I used to do this a lot better than I am now, but I try to keep the diameters of the barrels as similar as possible so that when you're joining things or using them, you don't have to have like 16 different drill bits in order to get things to mate properly. I try to keep clean lines, and I try to keep all of my radiuses identical so that you pull something from one design, it's going to fit on another design. So yeah, I think a lot of that, but there's some things where I have to kind of mesh them down, or I have to pull them in tight. Things like, my latest gun, like the M240B USMC has, how's everybody calling it? What are they calling this? Super scope, the big scope. There's a nickname for it.
Oh,
geez, chunky. I think the chunky optics or something. But it's so big that I had to drop it down onto the iron sight at the back of the gun. And
right.
Because you can't have, like a hundredth of a millimeter clearance, or it just becomes like a little spike of aluminum in the mold. So I had to make those touch. So I'm thinking of you guys every time I'm putting these things together. It's like, can you get this off? And can you get this off easily? Sometimes I think I'm successful, and sometimes I'm not. But I like to have the same design language through all my parts. It's kind of what keeps my stuff recognizable and consistent. Is keeping that all the same. So yeah, I am thinking about it because I'm a modder at heart too. I mean, the whole point of what I do is I'm taking this scope that I really like, this receiver that I really like, this four stock that I really like. Oh, I love the way I did this Ford iron sight. I love how I did this barrel, or I love this flash hider, or I really like this collapsible stock. How can I get those all to work together? And the times where it really messes up are when I think Badger wanted me to do something called cursed BrickArms.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Which is great. But he's given me all these fantastic ideas, and it's let's combine this and combine this, and they're all just gorgeous because he's really clever and creative when it comes to that stuff. His creative eye is astounding. And I look at some of those things and go, oh no, I can't put this stock with this gun. Oh shoot, because it drops down. Things like AKs are a nightmare because it has kind of a lower stock, which, with minifigs just doesn't work. That elbow on a minifig is such a pain to work with that you have to push the stock a little higher, which means you have to push the receiver a little higher, which means you have to push the grip a little higher. He had me putting some funky, it was a collapsible stock on the AK, and it just couldn't work because I had to push the stock up almost into the top of the receiver. And that's when I realized, well, just some things just can't go together. So I try to stay away from the things that will compromise the design, but are still like, removable. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's a tough dance, and also to make things look good. I mean, if you knew how many hours I spend on every design, like moving things, what looks like, yeah, they're zoomed in, right? But you're moving them across the screen in 1/100 of a millimeter. I'm just tiny. It makes a huge difference. Just pushing something out just a hair. I love to make it so that the stock touches the body as you twist the weapon in the hand, the minifig. I want that stock to just brush the square corner of a minifig's torso, just so it feels like it's seated into the shoulder. Getting that perfect is just tough. It's really, really, really tough. So I'm pushing things in and out, just like it's 1/100 of a millimeter, and just trying to make sure that everything works. But sometimes what happens is then that stock has to be shortened, because by the time you get from the grip to the shoulder, everything has to be shortened dramatically. And trying to make it still look good and still look like a stock of a gun it's probably the biggest challenge I think I have.
Interesting. Yeah, no, well, first, the hours you spend agonizing to make them look good, it pays off because the products are cohesive with themselves. And
Thanks.
it is really annoying, though, to have to work around the elbow joints that Lego has provided us,
Oh gosh,
because it almost completely ruins the possibility of bullpups ever existing.
I've tried it, and every other vendor has tried it. It's like, it's impossible. You just can't do it. You can't. Oh, you can, as long as it's like out of the hand or twisted out of the way, because you just can't get that mag to nestle down under the arm. Now, another probably the only trick I can think of is if I make my own arms that have like a magazine just stuck in the bottom of it, so it looks like it's tucked up inside like that. Then you can get away with it.
That's really, you're giving me ideas here. I might have to try that out. That's just not a terrible idea.
You just carve it out, right? But I want to stay, just so everybody knows, I want to stay away from making any minifig parts if I can help it. I have thought of doing like angled hands, just like maybe 16 different, angles, so that you can just hold things a little bit differently. But things that was holding me up was the plastic. It's like I couldn't figure out what the plastic is that Lego uses.
Right. Yeah. The hands plastic is a strange one.
You got it. It's actually Delrin. It's acetal. So I figured that out. So because like 5 years ago, I got a bag of hands from a special contact that I have in the dark web. No, special, yeah, that's it. But it came in the bag right from the manufacturer, and it said POM. I said, POM? I've never heard of that. So, of course, hit the Google machine, type in POM. It's acetal Delrin. It's polyoxymethyl something or another. And I said, holy moly, I know what that is. I use Delrin on all kinds of stuff. It's a very nice, flexible, but durable plastic. I use it to test mold sometimes. I machine in this stuff. And I thought, well, geez, maybe my molder can run Delrin. And he goes, of course, I've got it right here. He goes, I can color it in any color. I said, you're kidding me. So I had him run U-clips and had him run bipods in Delrin, which, short term, I just call it POM. And I put it with the M240B USMC that comes out, I think, October 1st officially. Anyway, just to see, you can't break them. Like the bipod, you can squeeze the legs. They bend right back. There's no snap. And the U-clips, they're unbreakable. So I'm really thrilled. But my long story short, what that means is you can produce things that are grippable, that have a beautiful flex, and then don't snap. So I potentially could make angled hands that could hold things at, what's the term when you hold a weapon cross-body and it drops down? Is it? Anyway, I don't know. There's a term
almost like it was like slung on the body.
Yeah, at rest. It's like
right,
points down. But the hand, but the hand can't do that. So I'm just thinking, are there ways we can play around with that without breaking the minifig, without getting in the place where you're treading in turf you shouldn't be treading?
Right.
But I think that's probably the only place I could see experimenting on. I thought of doing heads that could swivel a little bit, or where they're on like a ball joint. You could just bend them back and forth and up and down. There's just not enough room there. There's just, you're dealing with that I'm doing the robot arms. I've got hinged joints that I'm playing with, but there's certain things that you just have to work around. So I try to make all my weapons be held by a regular minifig with regular anatomy. and that's kind of the fun. That's the challenge, because most people do it wrong. Almost every vendor is screwing up, and I don't know why they don't do things right. But I guess it's good that I think I'm
You're the
doing
one
it right.
that got it. Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean. It's like they make the stock too long, and you have to put it in the hand, and it just puts it outside of the arm. You're like, well, who's playing with this? What are you thinking? You can't use this in any way. It's hard enough just to get the hands to match. I could jump into this if you're okay with this. The idea that when the hands on a minifig is trapezoidal, so it's his shoulders are closer together than his hips.
Mhm.
So what that means is, as the arms come up, they get closer together. As the arms
Yep.
go down, they get farther apart. You can't do a two grip hold without telescoping the connection, or sliding the connection. So I've started doing telescoping connections on everything that is double gripped. Like my Z6 rotary cannon has the grip that goes into the end of it can telescope out a little bit, so you can put it in crazy poses up over the head. My M2 flamethrower, I'm redesigning. It'll be out in a month or so. It's got a grip. It's got a telescoping a grip. I really love those solutions, but what it causes is you have to have perfection in that joint, because it can't be too loose and it can't be too tight. But I can see why other vendors don't want to go down that road, because it takes an incredible amount of precision. You have to have some of the best molders. You got to have good designs. You have to have Lego type quality when you're producing the parts, so that nothing slips through. You can't have something flash or it'll break it. You can't have short shots or it'll break it. So I really love that part, and I think I tell myself, as long as I'm still doing that, I'm doing something right. As long as I focus on the quality and like pushing the edges where I can, then I feel a little bit better about what I'm doing.
Totally. No, yeah. I mean, you pushing the community forward since the beginning. I mean, starting off with the guns is it's great. I don't know.
that was good.
You got my head spinning, but
yeah, doing that before it even came out, I was like, does anyone want these things? I mean, my son loved them, of course, because you can't. How do you make an M1A1 with bricks? You just can't. There's no option.
Right.
There's do it. And we made the first 6, and he was like, "It's perfect. I'm happy, Dad. This is great." And then I thought, well, maybe other people would like those too. And then we put them on BrickLink. No problem. I mean, Dan Jezik, the guy that ran BrickLink, before he passed, he was all for it. He loved my stuff, and I was on there for years before anyone really noticed I was there. Before they went all up in arms about, that's non-Lego. It's like, yeah, I've been here forever. I've been here a long time. Don't, just because you're late to the party doesn't mean that the party hasn't already been
started.
Been going.
Yeah,
exactly. So I was just lucked out that there was. Well, I don't say lucky. I mean, I don't believe in luck. I think preparation meeting opportunities is the way life works. So
yep.
I'm not superstitious or that way. So it's kind of like I was really pleased that the internet had just started going, that idea that you could do e-commerce online, and 2006 allowed that to start happening. And then of course, everything's gone through the roof since then. It's been awesome.
What actually made you decide to follow up on your son's desire for those guns? Like, what clicked that you were like, I'm going to take this into my own hands and try it myself?
Oh, it was fun. It was so fun. I think the first mold, I didn't have any CNC. I didn't have any injection molding. I just designed them in CAD, and they were so super detailed, like beautifully. Well, not beautifully. They're horrible, but my designs were garbage, but they were super detailed. And I took it to my molder just down the street. There happened to be a molder down the street, and he goes, "Oh, we can't make this. There's no way we can." He goes, "You've got details on here that are smaller than any known tool." I think I had like 1/100 of a millimeter, fillets, which is smoothing a curve on an edge. He goes, "We don't have any bits that could cut these." He goes, he kind of pretty much was like, sent me home, like, "Go home, kid." And I'm like, I'm 38,
You're crazy,
man.
go home.
I'm 38 going, "Okay, sorry, sir. Sorry to waste your time." So I went home and I redesigned them so they could be actually produced. And, but anyway, so once I produced that, I thought, this is really fun. I want to do this again. And we let that first mold run for a while, and I was selling enough that I could afford to make another mold, because they were like, it's like $15,000 a mold. I think my first one was at least that. And they're not cheap. This is all American made stuff, so it takes someone willing to put the time into hardened steel and produce these things. and then find a molder that can run it for you. And pretty soon my molder was getting really sick of running my stuff because it was so small, so tiny. And they're like, well, it'll take you a month to get these parts. I said, oh no, I really can't have that. So I found another stateside guy, but then it kicked off a process of my molder saying, you know what, I really got this great tooler. He's right next door to me, and he's willing to create a tool for you about the same size as you had with about twice the cavities. And I said, oh, fantastic. Let me whip up some more stuff. And then I think that was about the time that Dan got at BrickMania got really, really excited about what I was doing. And it's like, how about headgear? You know, how about we make it so we can actually make some soldiers? I'm like, cool, let's get that going. But I've got 54 molds produced, almost all of them are in production. I think one of them is worn out, but they're all running. And I don't see stopping at all.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah, but it was right about that time. Was like I really liked the CAD work, and I had a little bit of CAD background. I was doing forensic animation, car crashes, simulating car crashes
Okay, cool.
in computer. But my main thing, I was doing software development at the time, so I was really comfortable around the computer. And I thought, well, why should we stop? So my son he's the kind of guy who can walk into a room and go, oh, that's a little bit off, Dad. And not just say it's a little bit off, but he can say, Dad, it's off because this needs to be a little bit longer. It'll balance this better. And like, oh, you're right. So he's not as involved now as he used to be. He's 24 now. As a professional software developer, he doesn't have the time to look at Dad's stuff. But I really liked him being involved and, being able to say, well, I wouldn't be interested in this part, but the one you've designed, I can see why someone else would. And here's what I think it needs to have in order to be successful. And just getting that articulation made that work. But since then, I think it's mostly Badger. I think he sees every design I produce, and he gives me a lot of feedback on where something might be a little bit can be fixed or altered. And sometimes I send them to other people too and say, hey, what do you think of this? But I love that back and forth. I love that show it off and see what you think. And that's what the whole point of prototypes really is: put them in someone's hands and see where they fall apart, or see if they're super awesome, and then move forward with them.
Right. How quickly, you got that first mold up and going and everything. When did you sort of realize that there was other people, albeit small at the time, but a community of people customizing Lego as well?
Well, I think it was pretty much at the same time. And being an engineer at heart, the first thing you're going to go do is go look and say, has anyone done this before? And how
Sure.
did they do it? And what's a successful way? There was nothing in 2006. There was no way that anyone was publishing anything about how to make a production injection mold. It's like, if you didn't work for a toy company for this kind of small stuff, you just didn't know it. I think there was a couple people doing it. There was a guy in Hong Kong, his name was Red Bean, at a place called Red Bean Studios, and he was doing some really interesting work. And his was all medieval. It was mostly castle stuff, which didn't interest me at all. And then there was another guy, Little Armory, I want to say. He had a mostly castle stuff too, but really high quality stuff, like amazingly high quality, but really sharp edges, and I didn't think it fit in with the Lego aesthetic very well. But none of them, of course, would talk about how they do things, which made perfect sense. And I didn't really, you don't really ask people about that kind of stuff.
Right.
But there was a website called the Minifig Customization Network.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just a standard message board type website. And they welcomed me with open arms. It was like, come on in, talk about what you're doing. And I showed I said here's what I make, and here's the first thing. That's where I met Badger. Like,
right. Yeah, I was just going to say, that's how you met Badger. And
it was like the first post I put up. He's like, hey, this looks really, really good. And then he bought some stuff, and he's like, here's some feedback on this, or I really like to stay in contact with you on this stuff. And we've talked almost every day since. It's been 15 years, I think. Anyway,
that's amazing.
Yeah, he's just a great guy. And let's see. So then it started with that, and then social media didn't even exist. It's like just not even conceivable. No one really thought about the idea of. Our phones weren't even of that caliber. It was
right.
T9. You weren't used. They weren't smartphones, of course. This is boring
the brick
for everybody.
phones.
This is boring for everybody. What it was like before the internet? Yeah, no. So you just kind of grew organically, and then I thought maybe I can put my own forums up, and which was a nightmare. I love doing it, but managing it, keeping it running, keeping the bots out, keeping the spammers out, it just kind of turned into a real tough thing to work with. And I knew that when I mean, Badger loved running it. He was like the administrator. I think when he was starting to get frustrated with the software or how it was running, or then he was starting to say, hey, there's a thing called Flickr. There's other social media out there, and we're losing people to social media. It's like, well, I guess it's time to pack it in. Let's switch over to social media. And then that was like another stage of life to this kind of stuff, was Flickr, and then of course Instagram. And I think that's where I am now, is Instagram.
Yeah.
But it was like the community kind of grows and changes, and you lose people as they age in and out of it. And the the newer kids are so much more tech savvy. But I can't remember any other place. Eurobricks, I think, was a place, but they were much more puristy, and it was mostly Star Warsy, and I didn't have a ton of Star Wars stuff out at the time.
At the time.
Yes. Well, I say Star Wars inspired. It's not Star Wars stuff. It's Star Wars inspired.
It's Galactic Wars.
Yeah, that's right. Galactic Wars. I think my two first blaster packs are Stellar Nova. No, Stellar something else. Like it's Star Wars or Stellar. Anyway, just to this just a kind of a nod, a tongue in cheek to that stuff. But that, I think, is currently is where I'm most excited, because there's so many really neat crossovers between World War II weaponry and the props they used in the shows. And I really like exploring that. Like, what's the base of this gun? Well, it happens to be, a Lewis gun, or it happens to be an old Sterling rifle. It's like, oh, that's really cool. What did they keep and what did they throw away? And why did they do those? Those things are much more interesting. And since The Mandalorian came out, that's kind of really reinvigorated that for me. So that's why you see a lot of my new stuff being more science fiction-y inspired.
I was gonna ask it, because it's almost a bit of a meme in the community of like, all right, another Star Wars release.
Yeah,
we're still waiting for modern.
I know. There's the funny thing is I kind of look at my M4s and I go, how many more scopes can I put on this rig? And then I realize I could put all the scopes on this rig. It's like, how many stocks can I put? Oh, you could put all. Everyone's really. Oh, you could put all the stocks on. Hey, what about the mags? Oh, we'll put all the mags on. I thought, okay, I got it. I'm hearing it, and that's how the M4 TAC and SBR came out. And that was mostly because there's some really insane modders that and there's some fantastic guys, and it really inspired me to get some interesting stuff produced. But as Chris Kauga was really big with the M240B. He was like, hey, how's that M240B coming? Not the USMC now, but the M240B. Is like, how about 240B? Hey, Mr. Chapman, how's that going with that? It's like, you're right, man. You're right, Chris. I really got to get this thing done. And then I sent him a bunch, and he was like, looks good. And then he sends me a picture of him wielding one. I'm going, oh, yeah, you really know what you're talking about here. So I really like that part of it. But I had gotten a little bit of the M4 weariness, whereas like, I think it's the most beautiful platform available. I mean, aesthetically, it's gorgeous. I really just love... just growing up with M16, the idea of the M16 from the 60s and stuff. But I thought, well, maybe I've done as much as I can here, and I clearly haven't. So I've been playing around with that stuff. That's why the 240B USMC is out, because it's got different attachment points. It's got some ideas of what's too big of an optic. Let's try one. Oh, everybody loves it. Okay, I know there's a lot of room there to play around. And I think I want to explore a little bit more of that. A little less of the World War II stuff, just because it's fixed in time. There's no more new things, but the modern stuff is still changing, right? There's still new loadouts, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's all synthetics and stuff. I mean, some of the really cool stuff is lighter, and you can do more with things. But I like the personal single guy type stuff. I'm one man squad type stuff, and I'm less interested in trying to build out some super heavy weaponry, just because it's tough to go there without running into yourself over and over again, because that stuff's expensive. So it doesn't necessarily evolve as quickly in real life because it's expensive. So people like to stick with the platforms that really work. It's the small arms that get iterated quickly. So, and when you think of the calibers, the only thing I can do with calibers to go from like 9 to 5.56 to 7.62 is change the size of the mag, because there's no other way to see it, or increase the size of the barrel. But so I'm playing around with that, going, well, is that mag too big? Like my Scarish gun, it's got a really big mag, and no one says a word about it. It just, you can't cut it off and put it on an M4 platform. So it's like, I get it. You got to scale some things up to make things work, but But I'm just playing around. I'm hoping it works. And then if I see you guys using it, then I know I've done something right. If
Right.
it's kind of gets abandoned, then I know, okay. Or if you're plucking pieces off of it, then I know, okay, you like the scope, but you don't like the body, or you don't like the ribs on how I did the handguard. Okay, great. I got that. But I'm paying attention.
That's so interesting, the feedback loop from the community and modders to you and how you interpret that.
Oh, I see
That's good to
everything.
know.
If someone tags me, I see every single thing. I really love seeing what people use, but it's 200 or 300 stuff a day that I'm going through and following. And I'd love to be able to forward and put everything on my stories. I try as much as I can to get stuff out there, but it's mostly the stuff that really, really catches my attention. That's the stuff that goes up. Sometimes it's the photography, like Eli, and in figures, his stuff with just his addition of random elements like moss and foam and stuff. I'm going, oh, that's just beautiful. And it may not have a ton of my stuff in the photo, but I really love how he produced it. And I think that's something big about Instagram that I can't really get my head wrapped around, because I tend to work really fast, is the time. Well, I've seen you do it too. The time you spend staging your shots is as much time as it is. It's like 10-1 over the photograph itself. I think I saw you. Was it when you built your environment with it was like a mesh behind it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the new reel I had made.
Yeah.
Video. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And then my wife goes, "Hey, Billy's doing reels." And I looked at it. Oh, he's like a time lapse of how he put something together. She goes, "You should do that too." And I said, "Yeah, I probably should." But yeah, I like seeing that stuff. But then it really gives me a real appreciation for how much time you spend to stage those shots. And Colin does the same thing. TK1776 does a really, really fantastic job. I kind of look at how he poses his figures as the way I like to pose my figures, at kind of 3/4 angle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's getting that beautiful blurring behind the background and keeping the focus on the elements. There's stuff I try to pay attention to, but because of what you guys are doing, it makes me want to get really that much better, especially when you're zoomed in and you've got like a 3,000 pixel wide picture. Like, I better make sure
everything's under the microscope now.
Yeah. And I know my stuff holds up, and I know some other people's don't, but I want to make sure that, because I see every little mill mark, everything that pops up, like, yep, I know I missed that there. Or it'll be like, there'll be a little bit of a swirl from where the tool left the mold, and it shows up in some of your photos, not yours, but I say you collectively. You're like, okay, I got to work on that. I got to make that a little bit better, because it's kind of like the makeup industry for television shows. It's like, once they went into a high definition video, the makeup industry had to be like revolutionized, because things had to hold up at a much higher resolution and closer shots.
Right.
And it was like night and day for those people. They're like, we have to work really, really hard to make things look natural when you can see every pore of every person. So I think the same thing about my stuff is, like, I have to realize you're using it in a way that has to fit in with that ultra smooth figure. And if you're going to spend the time painting with your micro brushes to try to get, I think, geez, what with your R2D2, you had the tiniest little graffiti, like the littlest lines. I'm going, holy moly! Did you use like a laser beam? How did you do that? But I figure, if you're going to do that, I got to really make sure my stuff holds up too.
The paintbrush is literally called the Psycho.
The Psycho, is it one hair? Is like one hair of a
no?
Of a
I
cat
need to do
something?
that. I can't remember. Somebody I was talking to, they literally cut off all the bristles off their brush besides a single one. I'm yet to do that on one of my junked brushes now, but it's got a few bristles, at least enough to count on.
That was one of my favorite mods of yours, was the R2D2. Yeah, it was so
R2FU.
R2FU. And then when you wrote about it, and you said, or either you talked, I think maybe you talked about it on your cast. You said, oh, I screwed this up and I changed this and this didn't work. I said, I don't see any of that. I'm not seeing any of those. You know how everybody has, there's errors in everything you do. Oh, I didn't notice that no one sees any of that.
Yeah, only the artist is hypercritical of their work.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like, and you don't want to ever say anything, but you can't help it, because you're talking to your peers. And it's part of that.
Right.
You got to give a little bit. You got to say, here's where I'm having problems. Here's where I struggled, and here's how I solved it. Because people want to hear that. They want to hear, like me, I cut molds. Sometimes I cut molds 3 or 4 times, because I'm 1/100 of a millimeter off. I'm 1/100 of a millimeter from stressing the plastic when the scope goes into the part, or not stressing the plastic, because it's like the tiniest parts. Like, I make mistakes all the time. I scrap so much aluminum. And some of the molds that you've seen me give out to people are those things. They're molds that are not quite perfect, but I don't mind them being out in the wild like that. But yeah, it's just, people have to know, you just have to keep practicing, keep trying, because you're going to get better. You have to get better, unless you're not doing it right.
Yeah, right.
You got to be learning from your mistake. And then, but because of the Instagram, you can search for anything, and the web too. Search for, or go to YouTube and say, hey, maybe there's a smarter way to do this. And someone, without a doubt, has a smarter way to do it. It's very humbling.
Yeah, no, it's funny you talk on that. It's almost painful if you hear somebody complimenting work that you feel like so poorly about.
Oh God.
It's like, no, but you don't understand. Like, I did this wrong, and I did
Yeah.
this, and there's this issue with it.
You're exactly right. And I think you're exactly right. Every artist is that way. And it's really hard to not say, oh, but here's the problems. Here's where you have to just kind of swallow that, and you nod your head and say, thank you very much. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just be honored.
But when you're with the other painters, when you're with the other modders, and you're sitting at a table and you go, look, this is the problem I had with this. And someone goes, oh yeah, I had the same problem. And here's how I fixed it. And then it's like almost like a nurturing environment at that point. Because otherwise you'd have to, you're inviting all the comments for people saying, yeah, but when I did that, I use this and you should do that too. It's like that's not the point, that's not the point of why I'm sharing my troubles. It's not for you to tell me how great you are, which is fantastic, right? I mean, it's great that you're really good at what you're doing too, but it's more of I'm sharing with you that I struggle like you do. I struggle like everybody else does. It's not all perfect.
Yeah. No, it's honestly lovely to hear how in touch with the community you are. I know I've always known it, and I've known you appreciate it, especially with your effort to, like, say, trade prototypes for mods and stuff like that. But just hearing you name off all of my buddies, it warms my heart in a way.
Oh yeah, and I talk to all of them. I shouldn't say that. As time permits, it all works out. And like some guys that I've talked to, and then they go on your podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that discussion. I remember talking to Pete about his printer, or about his 3D printer, because I have the same one. We both shared the same. The EPAX 3D printer, and it's like he's having problems with his. He upgraded his to 5K, and I thought, okay, that's in my head. My instant reaction is, oh, that's a thing. As an engineer, it's like, what's changed between yours and mine? Because mine's working great. What did you change? Oh, he added something. It probably changed the level. No, it turned out that he just got a bad film and a bad frame.
Bad model.
Just a bad setup. That it happens. Everybody gets that screwed up printer. But his approach to it, I just loved hearing his approach and how he was solving that, and how it was like a very engineering approach. And then it's like, turns out he's like 18 years old or something.
I was blown away.
I was
literally on the podcast. I'm like, this whole time I thought he was just a tad older than me, and then he turns out I'm the one tad older than him. I'm like, excuse me? Like, what?
Oh yeah. And I look at those guys like that I talk to, like, you're the future. You're head and shoulders. You're so far ahead of anybody else at your age. And everybody meets those people. For you, they're kids a little bit younger than you, and you go, oh, you're talented. You're going to be somebody. I can see your approach to this is great. Your communication is great. I see that in you guys. It's like, this is just one part of who you are, is this hobby, but the things you're learning here and how you're interacting with people, you're going to take as older adults and be super successful in the next thing that you go after, because you've got this great background underneath of a good, respectful community. So I talk to all you guys where I can. Sean's, I love his work and I love his communication style, and I know that he's really, really close to Starconics 4. Mm-hmm. I know he's really close to Victor too. And to me, anybody's Victor's associated with has got to be stellar. So I try to, make sure that I'm sending him stuff to give out to you guys. Cause I think you're with Victor too, right?
Yeah.
You do stuff with him too.
Long time.
Right. You're like a production arm in a lot of ways.
I've called him my father on numerous occasions in various social circumstances.
He's a stellar dude. Yeah, I really liked seeing those miniatures that you guys were producing and designing, because as a 3D modeler, I'm looking at really carefully at the stuff I see and got, oh, you abstracted that walker pretty well, or you abstracted that. Geez, I don't know what the six wheeled figure tanky thing is. Anyway, whatever it is, the AT Blabity.
Yeah, it's AT something.
Yeah, everything is right. So yeah, that thing I thought, oh, you did really well, and you put it on the base, and it grew well. Grew in the plate really well, and the trans blue worked really well. don't think the tie was pretty good too. Just it was like as you probably did. You do the modeling on those?
No, I wish I had the talent. It was Colin and Sean were the ones
Okay,
doing that, and they
all right.
blew it out of the water.
But yeah, I look at that and go, you guys got it figured out. And I look at, I know we all know the 3D printing is the future once I don't know if you want to get into that stuff.
I was going to ask you it. As soon as you
yeah.
brought up Pete, I'm like, hey, we definitely want to,
Good.
definitely want to touch on resin
Good.
printing with you. Because
I got to tell you, oh yeah.
You were kind of ahead of the curve adopting 3D printing technology, obviously not on the smaller scale. You were using it with the clock figures and stuff like that. So, I mean, you're already shown yourself to be
I feel late.
Partial to it.
I feel late to the game. And
really?
And oh yeah, I thought, see, the resolution of the printers were so bad. I mean, I had a 3D printer from Full Spectrum Laser called the Pegasus 3D, and it used a vat that was made of joined acrylic with a rubber. It was like a silicone coated bed. And it was a nightmare. Nothing stuck to it properly. It would leave like an impression in the silicone, and you couldn't print in the same spot again because it was like leaving marks on it. So you had to like move your stuff around, and that was like one of the first 3D SLA printers out there. But it stunk like it was so gross. And then the trays would wear out, and you couldn't pour a new silicone into the bed. I thought this is just a bad technology, and I abandoned it. This is like, I want to say like 4 years ago. Then the new stuff came out with the FEP film, with this flexible film. And I thought, there's a good start. Now, how about, what is the resin like? Oh, the resin's brittle. Okay, let's wait a little bit. Next year, Form Labs has got, we got flexible stuff. Oh, we've got rigid stuff. Oh, we've got ceramic stuff. Oh, we've got 2 different types of rubber stuff. It's like, oh, you're kidding me. All the different durometers of rubber. It's amazing. This stuff's super floppy. Oh, this stuff is really rigid. Awesome. How about your colors? Oh, guess what? We can tint those colors. What? Yeah, we just put dyes in those. You can tint that. Oh, that's really cool. Well, what's your cost? Oh, we're like $5,000. We're $8,000. It's like, oh, that's a little bit out of people's price range. Then the $300 printers came out. Then $150 printers came out. And then I said, well, maybe I'll jump in and try one. So I tried a Mono S, and the build plate's too small. It's like only like 5.6 inches. It's dinky, but the resolution was okay. I think it's a 2.5 thou, something like that. And for perspective, I cut molds at half of 1,000th. So 0.005 inches is the resolution that I cut molds at, like super, 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 super tiny. So the best 3D printer now is like 2,000ths. So it's still like 4 times bigger than what I use, but I know that's going to get better. It's going to come down. It's all has to do with advancements in phone screens. That's really what's driving all this. You get higher pixels per millimeter on your phone screen. They just put those little phone screens down and they shine the light through it, and they're using those in 3D printers. Well, they're getting down to five. Oh yeah, they're pretty amazing. Some of the cheaper printers have three layers, so it's an RGB, and you have to shine the light through all 3 of them. So the exposure time is quite large. It's like 3.5 seconds to 5 seconds. But the newer printers are a mono screen, just one plate of glass. And my EPEX is that way. And I don't know if Pete's still using his. It's probably not by now. Oh no,
I think he returned it and got something else.
Yeah, he went to Elegoo, I think. Yeah, Elegoo. Yeah, they've been around a while and they're really sharp. Anyway, they're a mono screen, so you can get like 1.5 seconds. But even so, it takes forever to get your parts out. 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, and they're printed upside down in the dark. You can't really see it until it's halfway done.
Yeah, until it's done. Yeah.
Failed. There's no feedback, 0 feedback. You're just lucky if something doesn't fall off sometimes. But I mean, the technology is moving faster, but I find that I can inject stuff in seconds. I can cut molds. I mean, molds take a while to do, but my throughput in actual production is so much higher with injection molding. And because my parts are flexible and because they interact with the minifig's hand, there's a lot of power there that I just can't give up. And I say power in the sense that flexibility and the benefits of having something snap into the hand and snap out of the hand and leave no marks. That's the reason. That's the reason overmolds were produced. It's like, I want to be able to have a brown stock the guy can hold, but not paint it. Don't paint it, because if you paint it and you try to snap it off, everything comes up. No matter what you do, that abrasive POM material in that hand will scratch it off. So what I see is what I'm sure what everybody else sees is the printers are getting better and better so fast. As soon as the resolution is down to 1,000th of an inch, they're not quite there yet. And as soon as they get a resin that is ABS-like, it's not there
It's
yet.
gonna be game over.
Well, you got it. As soon as they can expose a little bit quicker. I mean, the prints you have now are constantly curing. You cure them in ultraviolet light, of course, but even out of the printer, they still cure. So they're getting, I won't say it's like forever, but they still cure outside of that. So they get brittle, and you can't really do weapons with it. But boy, can you make some great armor. Boy, can you make some great helmets. All the things that you don't interact with, the things that slip on, I'm a super fan of. I love seeing that stuff. It's also the reason I don't necessarily move in that direction right now. I'm not doing a lot of armor. I'm not doing a lot of headgear, because the limitations that I have as an injection molder are completely removed with 3D printing. You can do undercuts. You can do three-dimensional. You can put a scope on the side, or an illuminator on the side of a helmet. You can add interesting features on the plate of a minifig armor that I can't do. My stuff has to be able to come out of a mold easily. In fact, the mold I'm working on now for my flame trooper, World War II U.S. flamethrower rig has 3 removable plates just to get the straps over the top, the detail on the front, the detail in the back. I have to disassemble this mold every time I inject it. I get one part like every 3 minutes or so. It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But it's all Lego, and it's gluable as ABS. So all the pieces can go together the same way. They can snap in this way. So I think we're getting close, but I think there needs to be a slight technology shift into more durability, more flexibility. And I think that's just tuning the materials. And it's like a critical mass in the sense that it's not going away. So I really love seeing some of the great modders going, you know what? I've always wanted to do 3D modeling, and now I can. And like, holy crap, you can, and you're good. There's some really, really beautiful stuff. Valid Bricks is doing some great, it's a great starts. But I look at things like, of course, what you and Sean are doing too to help Victor. It's just one step away from that being perfectly acceptable. And Lego coming out with, here's the new Lego printer, put it on your desk and make, you buy the bricks at a penny a brick, goodness. And it just prints in ABS for you right there. You're like, cool. We know that's the future.
I don't know how I've never considered that, but that's a future I can look forward to now. That'll be amazing.
Imagine. That was the whole point of the
BrickLink in your home.
That's exactly right. And then you pay for the license of those files. You won't ever actually have them. You'll never have those 3D files. But you'll license them from Lego because there's no way they can keep up with the demand. I mean, half the time you only want one brick out of a set. I do. I only want the figures. Sometimes, I'm not building as much as I used to. I love the figures. I love everything about the minifig. I'll buy a set just to get the minifig out of it. Totally. Some things are $120, or Lego's going crazy with some of this stuff. Like just to get the Dark Trooper, man, that's just ridiculous. He's an expensive guy. It's like $160 set or something. I'm like, this is a great spaceship. It's swooshable and it's beautiful. It's a weird combination of scales. It's like there's a mini TIE fighter at one end, and then you open up the front end, you can stick a figure in it sitting down. I'm like, what are you thinking? But I get what they're doing, but I don't care about that stuff. I want the guys. I want that stuff. So I think maybe you won't print your figures, but you'll print everything around the figure.
Yeah.
Who knows?
At Brick Fair this year, a lot of the old heads got exposed to the quality of the resin, and it was interesting to see them not fully adopt it yet, but be receptive to that change, because it's like it's almost there. Like it could be the future, and it definitely, like you said, the critical mass it's not stopping.
Oh yeah, and I think it's mostly it's being adopted through the quality of the design as well. It's not just the parts. It's that it's a beautiful. Well, when you see it, it's just something works, and it works because of all of the design language that goes around it. That something. Well, you see, some people design things oversized with weird elements in the wrong places, and you go, it could have been better if this was just. Some people do it out of the box perfectly, and I see some of the ODST helmets. I see some of the insane Star Wars Stormtroopers helmets that are blow Legos out of the water. I think Lego went backwards when they created this new dual molded Stormtrooper helmet. It's a joke. It's a cartoon. It's not right. I can't twist it. I can't pose it.
You're putting out a hot take for all the Star Wars fans.
Oh, I hope so. I hope they light me up. It's garbage. I mean, it looks wrong. And try posing a figure with anything in their hands. He can't even look where he's shooting, that kind of thing. Well, I
Well,
guess
they
you
already
can.
can't aim, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I guess it works. But I mean, but you look at the Scout Trooper helmet, night and day. Scout
Mhm.
Trooper, gorgeous, perfect, absolutely right. There's nothing wrong about it in any way except availability. You can't get it in anything. But but it's fantastic. And I thought, well, why couldn't you have done a classic Trooper helmet with those? Because they really wanted to make sure they got strong black elements that didn't scratch off, that didn't come off. The paint just doesn't work well, and black paint on white stuff just doesn't work very well. So, but anyway, I look at that and think they're moving in directions where they're trying to make sure that their elements are viable. I don't know if that's the right word. They can't come apart. So
Mm.
so they're overmolding arms and legs and all kinds of things to make sure the durability is there. But 3D printing just can't do that either. You're not really getting multiple colors. You're not getting multiple elements. You can't really combine them unless you try to glue it. And I'm not sure what the glue is for this resin. It's a weird resin. I mean, maybe UV, of course, UV glue would work. But there's areas where as soon as that gets there, you're going to see Lego, adopting some of that, probably some rapid production stuff.
I saw, I believe it was Nate experiment with that, where he had like a trans blue visor that he put onto a helmet, both resin printed, and then he just glued it on separately. But
that can work. And I think there's a dental glue I think it's where all this stuff came from, with the UV curing resin. And it's a glue that, you expose to UV light. It's just like the resin in the tub. But I think you can use that as a glue with a UV pen. So he could have put like little dots of glue on that, and it would blend right in. You wouldn't really see it, because we all know that there's so many different types of super glue. Trying to get the right super glue that works with what you're doing is hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes it's just what's available. Some things leave weird, crazy hazes on it.
Yeah.
There's just all kinds of stuff. So as soon as that becomes more common, I think we'll see more composited elements, and that'll just blow everything out, injection molded out of the water too. I mean, geez, Lego's doing it too. They're injecting things that are transparent and then painting all the solid colors around the transparent elements. You're like, how did you do this? Oh, you started with the transparent item. We just can't tell unless you look underneath it. But that, to me, that's half the fun. Is I get a set and I'm like, how'd Lego do it? How'd you guys figure this out? Oh, that's how you did it.
So now, going into not copper drop, specifically for you, Will, we have design or resign. So we're going to go through a couple items that everyone is clamoring for you to make or visit, and you're going to tell us if it's on the agenda, maybe one day, eventually, or you're going to resign, it's not happening ever, and to get it out of everyone's dreams.
All right.
First up, we have the HAC, or a SCAR, a version 2. Design or resign?
Oh, I want to say it's in between. It's not high on the list. I'm not happy with what I produced. What I produced was really weak detail-wise. I should say it's the old BrickArms design, old style, which is very smooth and not a lot of buttons. I'd like to add some things to it, but
modernize it.
Yeah, and it's a high caliber weapon, so that's there's challenges in scaling things like that too. But so maybe.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not adverse to it.
This one's just kind of a genre in its entirety, but Halo guns. I know that's quite an exciting topic now because of the new game coming out.
Yeah, I'm not into that world right now. So I don't see that happening, but you never know. I mean, yeah. Everything, right. You realize everything's going to be a design, right?
A resign, yeah.
I've told people so many times, oh, never make that. And then the next day is like, oh, yeah, I can make that.
Oh, why was I making this? Oh, yeah, we had that conversation.
Yeah, I totally forgot. Sorry about that.
I have a couple more to go here, but typically the copper drops are in 3s. So for the final one was the double-barreled shotgun, which you just posted on your story that might be happening down the pipeline. So
how weird. I wonder, what a weird coincidence. Yeah. I've always wanted to, and Badger's been badgering me about that specific item. I've got some really great first looks at that. There's some fantastic approaches to it, and I really want it to happen. And I think it'll end up being a modular design where you can mix and match your barrels to your stocks.
Oh, goodness.
So there'll be mod commie if possible. Mod commie, that sounds horrible. Mod commable. Mod commable. And you know how I'm still slightly adverse to mod com right now, just for the durability aspect of it. It's expensive and not as durable as I'd like it to be. That's the only reason you're not seeing more of it out there. But I think it needs to happen. And I think let's put it this way. The precision of my machines are so much better now that I can get a good joint on the connection of that wood stock to the barrels, and maybe, who knows, maybe even it break open, have a nice
A little break
open.
action.
Yeah, I don't think we could have loadable shells because they would be so
Leave that
dinky.
to the modders. You could leave that to the modders.
Yeah, maybe I'll dimple the end of it so that it'll be easier for you to drill. I'll probably do that. I'll probably dimple the ends so that if it does break open, you have a place to start your drill.
I'll take all the help I could get.
It's called
pilot
center.
hole.
A pilot. Well, like a little dimple that you can get your drill in. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think first off, it'll be probably something that's can go coach gun to full size to maybe over under, of course, side by side. But there's a lot of real. It's a really abstract. There's a lot of It's a simple weapon. There's a lot of real simple detailing to get right, and you got to get it right, and the balance has to be good. So yeah, I think it'll happen. It may happen this week. Who knows?
I love it. I'm glad the idea of the actual joint itself being modular, so you could kind of plug and play it. Then you could have the different barrel swap in is very cool. So you could have the over under or side by side and
and I think was it Andy? I think it was Pekavam that put a couple of his inspirational, like, hey, it could look like this, and everyone's like, yeah, that's a good approach. So I'm definitely influenced by that. It's like I see where you took the stock down a little bit on the front end. I see where you kept a little bit at the back end. And it's like I look at all that because you guys are all you have a really good eye for how this stuff how you want it to work with your figures. And I look at all that. I mean, I want to say it's collaborative, and in some ways it is. And I want to hope that I'm continuing that. So that's one way of looking at it. And if you could ever get Andy on one of your things, he'd be fantastic.
That would be incredible. I'll definitely add it to my list.
I think my first painting I did was like 9 years ago. I painted some of his armor, and it was just a joy because you discover the details when you're painting, right? You really get to know something when you're painting it. And I realized he sculpted this by hand with an X-Acto blade. It's like in its mirror, its symmetry is insane. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Anyway, he's a good one to have.
Yeah, that's always been a marvel with the actual hand sculpted stuff, because obviously working in CAD, you're able to mirror details like that. But when somebody paints something symmetrical, that's
brutal.
Unreal.
You can get one side great, but you never can get the second side right. So that's the nice thing about photography. You can't hit both sides unless you just pick the side that works and take a picture of that side. No one even has to know this other side isn't even detailed at all.
Oh, it's all. I've almost come to this sad realization, just recently, that all the figures I've posted on my page recently are technically not complete. Because if you look on the other side, like it's missing the cummerband around the vest, it's unpainted on the one side.
It doesn't have to, unless you take it to a convention. Unless you take it to a convention where people can see it from all sides. It's okay
to complete.
Especially because it's your vision. It's how you want to represent the subject matter. It's your choice of lighting. It's your choice of staging. You're forcing a perspective, and it should be fully in your domain. I mean, I'm not a fan of photoshopping things, like adding details through Photoshop afterwards. I mean, removing defects I do all the time. Everybody takes dust off their shots, but yeah, I don't see there's anything wrong with that unless you're going to turn it around and put it on a base. I think Nikita, one of the guys online, his stuff, he put rotated it, and it was just gorgeous from every angle. He's like an insane Nikita Smirnoff. Been around forever. One of the best painters I've ever seen. His stuff.
I miss seeing him at cons, but I recently reconnected with him on Instagram. It was nice. To talk to him.
Good. Yeah, he's been out of the scene for a little while too, but he'd be one to talk to. He's a character, so I don't know if he would pop on at all, but he's been through a lot too. So he's a great guy.
Definitely.
And I think I'm pitching people, but if you could get Phoenix on and get Adam Sansale from Phoenix Custom Bricks, he might.
Oh yes, he's been on my list as well. Actually,
he's a really super dude. He did the designs of the pouches for one of my first U.S. and German figures.
Really,
completely modular. He thinks in modularity. I think I did some test prints for him before he got started. I knew he was going to be something big, and his stuff is gorgeous. You could talk about his Grogu for 16 years. He's just it's insane. I mean, the stuff that he's been doing. So
no, those figures are flawless. That's actually kind of brings up a topic we didn't touch on, is your phase of printing yourself on using.
Yeah. I'll touch on that real quickly.
Yeah,
I wanted to print on things. I especially wanted to do camo. I wanted to print camo, and I wanted to spray it like spray paint. And I thought, how the heck can I do that? I found a printer that was a UV solvent inkjet, not the kind you see now, not the kind where the ink lays on and is cured and it's kind of got like a
Right, like the
three-dimensional
digital
texture.
UV.
Yeah, this is a glue. It's not glue. It's the wrong word. It's ink, but it's cured through UV light. I spray the entire bed with a camo pattern, and I lay all the guns out on the bed, like just sprinkle them out, and the bed moves. The printer stays still, and the bed moves. It was really, really cool.
Huh.
No, it was the other way around. Yeah, it's the other way around. The bed stayed still and the printer moved. So so the stuff didn't even move. Like normally if you put like BrickArms on a table and you shake the table, they're going to roll and flop around.
Right.
But I love doing that. I love printing on that. And then the printer started to clog, and then nobody made them anymore because they clogged like crazy. So I dropped that. And then I went and got like a DCS before DCS was anything, like one of their first printers. I think I was like printer number 6 or something. And I had a heck of a time getting it to register right. I was fighting the printer. Every time registering means when you first start printing, I couldn't have the printer start in the exact same spot again. It would be like off by like 1/100 of a millimeter, 1/10 of a millimeter, which is death to designing or to printing on a good minifigure. Then I realized that other people did it so much better than me. Their designs were better. Their style was better. Everything was better. And I thought, okay, I don't really need to be in the space anymore. And then I think I sold the printer, and I don't think I'll ever print again. I'm a better 3D guy than I am a 2D guy. And it just shows like crazy. There's so much insane talent that needs to be in that bubble, be in the spotlight, because like, of course, we could talk about Victor all day. His stuff is gorgeous, and Lando as well.
Yeah.
2 different styles, but perfectly suited for exactly what they're working with. I mean, consistent. I mean, Victor's just the graffiti on a wall blows my mind, because it's a style I'm not familiar with, but I just really appreciate the handwork that goes into that. All of the little like cereal boxes, and every one of them is a perfectly designed miniature. I mean, he could be a product packaging designer in real life, that kind of thing. He's that good. So I realize that's the time you don't hand the baton. There was no baton to pass, but he's definitely, those kinds of guys need to be pushing the boundaries of the edge of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, especially with the digital,
yes,
the UV
Citizen Brick,
printers.
of course. Citizen
Right.
Brick, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people put more respect on the pad printers, thinking of the technicality going behind it, because they believe like the digital printer, you just set it and run like it's a inkjet printer you got sitting for printer paper. But it's so far from the truth.
The jigs alone, that making the fixtures that can hold the fix.
Yes.
I got my first laser cutter just to cut jigs to hold my figures in. You just hold the people, but I realized it made no difference. Everything I tried to do to register everything made no sense when the printer couldn't start in the same place again. It'd be like having a CNC printer that just started in a different place. My molds wouldn't connect to each other. But it was mostly that I think the pros now are using CNC machines to cut their fixture boards so that everything is perfect, and they're printing on every edge of the figure, fronts, sides, backs. I'm like, you gotta be. I was going insane just doing the fronts of a figure. I'm just nothing but pure respect for these guys that get them to register right. And of course, pad printing, there's a precision with pad printing that is still, I'm amazed by that as well. But that the digital guys can get it done too is pretty insane, because you're spray painting it like a millimeter above the surface of a part, just so they can get that to work. I think if you look at some of the helmets that Brickmania is doing, even they're getting patterns to almost connect across the top. This is Slam I'm talking about, the S4. He's one of the most best operators. He's a designer as well, an illustrator too. One of the best, probably one of the most skilled, talented operators of the machine that I've ever seen. But I'm assuming they're using something similar to mine. It was probably a DCS or maybe he's using a Roland. I don't know, but he's getting so the patterns match over the top of the helmet seamlessly. There's no stretching. There's no blurring. That's where I look at it and say, you guys are pushing the boundaries. There's no reason for me to be in that space anymore.
Yeah, no, those are really impressive. And what I love also is they've been doing fully wrapped heads as well that have perfectly registered all around. It's incredible.
And if you look, I mean, you probably have seen it because you've been at Victor's place. You know the hell he goes through, that you mess one up and you mess the whole tray up. There's a
I've
lot
dug through elbow deep of just rejects, just
Oh,
right off the
geez.
press. It's
And if you're spraying over something, you get this buildup of ink on
of
the
ink.
edges of your
Yeah.
Vic, and it's baked on. And I remember doing that with my stuff, going, "Why am I spending so much time laser cutting this little fixture that I put on another brick, which then is stuck down on my table?" And this is really beyond what I want to do. And my ADD doesn't really let me just spend a lot of time on things that I'm not getting, a good
Enjoyment out of. Yeah.
good enjoyment on. Yeah, that's why it's hard for me to build a set anymore. I did finish the piano, the Lego piano. It's really, really cool, but that one was a struggle for me to get through.
I just bought the first set that I actually plan to build for like the set purposes at Brick Fair this weekend in
What'd you
probably
do?
like 5 years. The bouquet. I just thought the
Oh,
flowers were
it's
incredible.
great. It's great. Your mom will love it. I gave mine to my
No,
mom.
this is from mine. This is
Oh,
mine.
my mom's 75, and she came to visit, and I said, "I bought this for you." She goes, "Let's build it now." She built it with me, and she's never built a Lego. She's always encouraged me to do Lego my whole life. She's always been, "That's awesome." Everything I show her, "That's really awesome." Like every good mom is, of course. But we built it, and she took it home. She took it home for, and it came apart in the plane somehow. She
Oh,
put it back together without any pictures or instructions, based on the photo that she took of it on the desk. And I thought, "You're a pro now."
that's
Because
so wonderful.
it's fragile in places, but you'll really like it. I was impressed with the color of it, and
Yes.
some of the
Using the light flesh tones for some of the petals is so cool.
holy crap. And it's like there's some non-standard building. I swear there's some non-standard building techniques in there, and Lego's gotten really loose with that things, and I'm happy to see that,
Yeah.
because that's what we all do. We do things that are non-standard all day, so of course we love
Yeah.
to see it
The
in
quote
anything.
unquote illegal building
Yeah,
techniques.
I love those. I love those Instagram stuff.
Yeah.
Someone will
It's
show like,
so funny.
what was it, like a brick's connected together on one step, and then it tips down and it says illegal. It's like, come on, they bend the brick, like it's straight, it's legal. You bend it, it's illegal. It's like, no, I think you're talking about it's like studs not on top. That used to be never ever. And then they make a brick that has studs all around it, and you're like, okay, I get it. We can do anything we want within reason.
Man.
Who cares? Who cares about what's real? I mean, what's approved? That's not the whole point. Point of Lego, you build the way
You
you
don't
want to build,
innovate that way.
and find a community that appreciates what you're doing, and work with that within that community. And that's why I love the shows. Is they've gotten so large now. There's little elements and sub elements and sub genres that people can be a part of and be totally happy with. You don't have to be a purist and be good. So.
Yeah, and that's also just thanks in part to the internet, not even in part to the internet, just that we could find each other to form that sort of community.
Oh, it's humbling, and it should be humbling. You should be looking at things and going, "Oh yeah, that's done really well. I wonder what I can take from that and learn from," instead of going, "Oh, I'm no good because this guy's better than me." So it's not about that, man. It's not about that at all. There's always somebody better than you, and it's not about someone being better than you. Having fun and enjoying what you're doing. If you're doing that, you're doing it right. And I don't always like to read everything about what I do. Like I'll get reviews on my work, and people talk. I'm okay with it now because I see it from their perspective is really unique to how they see it, and they maybe weren't able to articulate that. But the whole point of it is that's good. That's good that you're doing that. It's good that you're seeing what somebody else is doing and saying, I might do that. I've done that a little differently without, I can't use the right word, shitting on them. I'm not saying you suck because of what you're doing. It's not that at all. And I know the internet has gotten from more of an accepting space, which is really good. It kind of makes it hard to do critique sometimes.
It does, especially what's the transfer from Flickr to Instagram has embraced a culture of just like.
I completely agree. I think it's the ease of the ease of hit the heart, hit the heart and bounce, and sometimes you need that. You need people saying, I've seen this. And it's them really just saying, look, I've seen this and I like it. Because your views to your likes are completely different. You can have thousands and thousands and thousands of views and 100 likes. That's giving you a clear message that people saw it, but they weren't motivated enough to even say something. But the CNC just doesn't have like critique. What is CNC? Constructive criticism just doesn't happen anymore because someone else will look at what you're saying. That's not fair of you to say that. It's like, no, look at what they're saying. They're saying that this is the parts I like and why. And I try to do that when I post on someone's thing. I really like the lighting, or I really like the staging on this. That may have not been what you were looking for, but to me, that's what I got out of it.
Right.
Because that's what I'm looking for in a photo. It's like I've seen that set 100 times, but I haven't seen it the way you've presented it. who is it? She's some of the best, one of the best. The guy that just won Lego Masters the first season.
Oh,
I'm blanking.
From the European one or
No,
the
American.
Oh goodness, I
Tyler.
can't recall his name.
Tyler,
Yes,
right?
I
Yeah,
believe so.
yeah. And some of his first photos where he was putting a Lego spinner, and he had Deckard out in front of it. He did, and it was the lighting, it was the rain on it. His post processing that I really, of course, the set is gorgeous. His designs are fantastic. But to me, what I really got out of it, what I really loved, was how he made the rain kind of halo. And that's what I commented on, because that's what was meaningful to me. He doesn't want to see everyone say, nice build, great shot. Oh, love the. But if you say a little bit about why you like something, it's more meaningful to us. Same with me. If you say, I like that the scope is removable. When you said, oh, I like the M27IR, it's the best thing we'll produce. Why? I know why. Because you said it. It's because I can mod it. I can clip it apart. I can take the pieces off of it. And I can reuse it. Oh, I guess I need to do more of that. Make the rails cleaner. Make it so that, if you take, that's good. That's the kind of feedback I want. Not, it's a great gun. Well, why? Well, it just is. That means nothing to guys like us. So anyway.
I would have saved so much money if I got like a wholesale bag of those from you.
Well, I saw when you talked about the SMG, or it was the my combat SMG. You're like, I didn't realize those things were out of production. I'm like, yeah, that was my very first
the MP5s,
mold.
right?
Yeah, it's a 13 or 15-year-old mold.
Yeah,
it's
unbelievable.
It's just not running as well as I'd like it to. And there's things on it that have been changed. I think what did you write to me and I told you about this? Like,
yeah,
the M4 is not. I don't make that M4 anymore. I don't make that AK anymore. I don't make that RPG. They've all been updated to modern stuff. I just don't have any interest in changing that item or altering it into something else. So he's like, good luck, man. I hope you can find it, because I have none in the shop. They don't exist. Maybe 5. I think I have 5 for nostalgia's sake, but they just don't exist.
That actually brings back to another question I meant to ask earlier. And then, I mean, you kind of answered it yourself just now, but the shelf life on those molds that you're producing. So that's been running. That was like your original mold, and you've still been producing off of it?
Yeah, that's mold 1 with 6. It had 6 parts, and then I added 2 cavities to add 2 more. I think I added the PSG in that. And it was running up until like 2 years ago, I want to say. And it was struggling a little bit because the pins that are ejecting the parts are always like carving out the cavity. In fact, one of my helmet molds, I pioneered injecting the plastic through the ejection pin so that my injection point is underneath the helmet. Most helmets, most Lego stuff, it's on the edges or the back. I hate that look. But because of one of my molds, I put it to the side of the ejection pin, and it kept rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and wearing out. That just happens over time. It just was premature with one of the molds that I made. But that first mold has got a little bit of that. I found a fantastic molder. Like, he's the best in the United States. He babies my tools. He cares for my tools. He cleans my tools. He repins my tools. He's just like sometimes you find the right people. Sometimes the right people find you. He's that guy. So I could probably get it to run again if I needed to, but what I would end up with 1 thing that everybody likes and 7 things that nobody wants. I mean, look at my first 1911. Like, what the heck was that gun? Is it a Glock?
It's more of a Glock than, yeah.
I said, yeah, it's whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have a trigger hole. Well, I couldn't design that. I didn't know how to do that at the time. So because of that, you'll probably never see one of those from me again. But there's some other competitors that have a pretty decent equivalent. I think it's the suppressed version. It's a D version, but it's still decent enough.
Yeah.
But good on you for trying to get what you could have from.
Thankfully, I've got a lifetime stock now from Toy Wiz. So
well, sit on them for like 5 years. They're just like Lego. They'll appreciate dramatically. They'll be worth at least $10 each in no time.
If I don't mod them before then.
Plus, you can always you can say, hey, Will said he's never making them again.
Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't mean I won't. It just means at the time I said I'd never make them again.
Tomorrow you're going to be sitting there designing the next MP5. You're like, what am I doing this for?
I get the heat all the time for, hey, you made that prototype 6 years ago. Why are they in Will's workshops? Like, well, because I pulled the mold out from the bottom shelf. It was collecting dust, and I had some weird plastic, and I ran it. But that doesn't mean I'm going to run them anytime soon. That doesn't mean there's more than 50 of them in existence in the world. It just means that I ran it again. It shouldn't take away from your collection. Shouldn't take away from what you have. I mean, I've had some kids say, you took all the money out of my investments. Like, I was not making these for an investment. I was not saying that they were ever in limited supply in that sense. I love kids coming to the shows and getting prototypes if they can get them. That's half of what ModCon was, right? You come to the show, you get something unique. But it was like, if I make those again, I've got drawers full of molds, and I'm excited to try something new. So, that's just how that goes. Who knows?
Yep.
There might be more combat SMGs in the future. If someone really wants that old 1911, I guess I'll have to make it.
Oh, geez.
Nobody wants it. Nobody wants my old RPG either. Like, what is that thing? I said,
there's something charming about them all. But
it was supposed to be an RPG and also a Panzerfaust. It's like, how could I get both of those things together to be kind of the same thing? That's as close as I got. and it didn't work on either end.
And it's infamous for it, honestly.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, I saw someone actually like cut one apart and put a spring inside of it and had it launch the thing out. I was like, that's the best thing you could ever do with this is take it apart, rip it apart, do something else with it. Oh, man.
Does that feel weird that one of the greatest parts of your community is just destroying your work and making something new of it?
Oh, I love it. Well, that's the whole point of ModCon was I like, hey, you guys are ripping this stuff apart. What if I could just get you those parts that you need?
We just give you the scraps.
Yeah. There's a thing that's like, someone else says, I've got all these sprues and can I send them back to and re-inject? I said, I re-inject everything I have. I recycle all the plastic I can possibly recycle. I really don't need any more. But yeah, it's like, that's the kind of thing is just as one final thing is I do want to do more of those scopes and stocks and mags.
Wow, like you did for the M27.
Yeah. I want to do more modding. What the heck have I called it now? The mod shop. Yeah. Under a new mod shop brand kind of thing. It's like trying to get as much of that out there as possible. You might still have to go to a show to get it. You might have to get it only through Victor. I don't know. I mean, Victor kind of brings all you guys together, and he's Eclipse Graphics is one of my biggest fans of supporting you guys. I'm not saying other people don't, but he's so into that stuff that I loved it to help him be a part of that as much as I can. So you might see more and more of that happening, but I can't put a time on it or a date on it. It may be next BrickCon. It might be next Brick Fair. Who knows? For you guys at Brick Fair, you always get something new and interesting.
Yeah. All right then. Will, this has been an honor.
For me too, man.
I really don't know what more to say. Yeah, this was just such a pleasure to actually sit down and talk to you about everything. Sure. I don't even know what we've hit. It's been a whirlwind.
Just wait till you play this thing back. I'm all over the place, which I hope some of it's interesting to people, but you never know.
It certainly will be.
I know when you wrote to me and you said, I don't want it to be an interview style. It's like, that's exactly right. And I don't just read off a question and me read off an answer. It's like, if we can go somewhere on a tangent, I'm totally cool with it.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's what I've always aimed for, is to keep it more or less conversational. So,
all right.
Any final thoughts for the audience?
No. Just keep having fun. Keep modding. Keep painting. Especially keep painting. I like seeing all the paintwork that's happening with these guys. And someone was right when they said, put a base coat on your figures before you paint them. Yeah, it'll take the shine off and make it a whole lot easier. And then one final thing was that more people. I love these podcasts. So please get more and more people. If you can do it, keep going.
Yeah, no, at bi-weekly, I can. I definitely feel like I could keep that up. I don't want to say indefinitely, but indefinitely.
When I looked at all the people you've talked to, like, oh, that's just 30. There's like an easily 100 more.
Right.
I know that's not saying pushing you to do this, but I really enjoyed them.
Thank you. No, I felt like at the 15 mark or so, well, when I first started, I was like, man, like there's only like a handful of friends that I could get on, but hey, we'll just keep it moving. And then I got to 15 and it's like, oh, well, I got to get this person and this and all those people have almost fallen to the wayside as like a new, more exciting. I hate to say it that way. But like one that's fresh on your mind that you want to go after immediately. But I feel like there'll be almost an indefinite stream of people to get on. And then like, I want to talk again to some of my buddies. So like there's reoccurring guests and all of that.
I wonder if there's a way to like set up a timeline or just a big map, and it just says for all the people that you have, like how they're connected. Like he knows him, and he was his buddy, and this, because everybody knows everybody, because it's really a small. When you look at it, it's a small community, but it's worldwide. The people are everywhere. I think some people are stationed in another country right now, but right. You know what I mean. It's like all those people know each other that way, and they got together here at Brick Fair. This is when we saw each other here. That would be probably impossible to do, but that will help people tie together like why you know them and how you know them. I think you touch on that actually in most of your podcasts. So maybe it's not as big of a deal.
No, yeah, it's a really interesting thing to see how everything's sort of networked into the way it has. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, and I think your show helps do that too.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Thank you again so much for coming on. Have a good night, Will.
All right, thanks for having me. We'll see you.
Man, this episode is one for the books. I really can't thank you enough for coming on, Will. It was just an absolute blast getting to talk to you, and I look forward to having you on again before, let's say, episode 60 or so. But seriously, thank you all for listening, and if you enjoyed the podcast, share it with a friend or leave us a review on iTunes. I want to give a huge thank you to all of our patrons on patreon.com. We have Justin, Francisco, Jay Briggs, Tash Briggs, PK Custom Lego, Milo, Jay, Mini Biggs, Thomas, Mango Ride and Mongo, and Bluesy7. All of your guys' support just means so much. I'm really appreciative for all you guys sticking it out and supporting on the Patreon. If anyone's interested, I just got some custom printed torsos with the Bricks and Banter logo on them, and I'm selling them as a bundle with the stickers, so you can hit me up on Instagram to get one of those if you're interested in supporting the pod. Otherwise, that wraps it up for this week. I'll catch you next time. God bless.